As social media was forming, there were no rules, no prior experiences to caution those logging on. It was chaos in the making, with humans hiding behind keyboards and usernames and believing that it wouldn't affect them in reality. However, in this case, an online teenage fight led to a real-life fight that ended in murder. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's case is about a social media fight over a boy that led to murder. If you don't know, it is my absolute passion to tell these stories, and I mean no harm or disrespect when I do so. So if that's something you'd like to support me in doing, all you have to do is make sure you are subscribed with the post notification bell on, giving this video a thumbs up, and leaving a nice comment down below. Now let's get back to the video. So it was 2009 in Florida, and Sarah Ludeman lived in Pinellas Park. She had been born on December 7th, 1990, to a father who was a cab driver and her mother who was a nurse, and she was also an only child. They had waited quite a while to have a kid, and then they were really, really happy when they had her, and they didn't really want to have any others afterwards. Her and her dad were said to be the best of friends. They were always together. They were doing karate classes. They would sing country music together. They were dancing. They were just inseparable. They were, the perfect daddy-daughter duo. And although she was really good friends with her father and was a wonderful little individual, she struggled at school to make those friends because they were bullying her due to her weight. Now, if any of them would have taken the time to get to know Sarah, they would have found out that she was an animal lover aiming to be a vet. She was a wonderful student, an empathetic human, and a great friend. In 1990, she was an 18-year-old who was still in high school at this time, about to graduate. She lived with her parents, she still had a curfew, and she also had a boyfriend named Joshua Camacho. Now, she was absolutely in love with him, and she'd actually recently switched schools to be with him. And the year prior, they had met at a Chick-fil-A where Sarah had gone with one of her friends, and Joshua was a chef at Chick-fil-A. And so he came out of the back during one of his breaks. He saw Sarah and instantly thought she was beautiful and ended up winking at her and introducing himself, and from there it was history. And this was actually Sarah's first boyfriend. On April 14th of 1990 though, Sarah would end up calling Joshua, and he would have to run to her parents' home and let them know that something was horribly wrong with Sarah. Now, Joshua was supposed to hang out with her later that night, but of course they had gone their separate ways throughout the day, and Sarah would be found lying in the middle of the street, bleeding. Now, it appeared to be a stab wound. However, medics were really just trying to rush her to the hospital to keep her alive during this time because she was still breathing. Now, while investigators were trying to piece together what had happened, they would find out that Sarah had actually passed away from her injuries at 2:20 a.m. So it was only about 2 hours after they had found her, and the cause of death was deemed to be a puncture to the heart. This was now a murder investigation, and thankfully there were actually lots of witnesses at the scene, and a lot of the fingers were pointing at this 19-year-old named Rachel Wade, who was also at the scene. She was arrested, taken down to the police station for questioning, and Rachel was this super young-looking, beautiful, tiny girl who didn't necessarily look like she could be a killer. But as we all know, looks can be very deceiving. You see, Rachel was born on February 27th of 1990, so she was in the same grade as Sarah was, but she was already 19 because her birthday had already passed. She was born to her father, who was a truck driver, and her mother, who was a special ed teacher, and she had a brother who was 4 years older. Now, she was an adorable, sweet child who wanted to be a princess, and she did great in school. She made lots of friends. She grew up to be this stunning girl, but she eventually turned into more of a wild child. And when she was 15 years old, she completely started to change. Things began to get really, really bad. These were normal teenage problems at first, but it began to escalate to the point where her parents didn't even know what to do. The fighting was constant with them. Rachel did not like to be told no, and she would put up a fight every single time her parents didn't allow her to do something. And eventually, when they told her no and said that it wasn't changing, she would start running away from home. Now, at this point, she also dropped out of high school and began to hang out with much older boys. Her parents had tried taking her to different counselors, to a job to have more stability. She worked at this doggy daycare. They would even drive her there, but nothing was helping. While she was 15, she was actually found in a car with a 19-year-old man who was then arrested and charged with a felony sex crime for being with her. It escalated from there, though, because Rachel's parents were having to call the police when they would get into fights with her because she began to physically attack them. This phase had lasted for the next 2 years, and when Rachel finally said, "I'm moving out with my boyfriend," they didn't really fight her because they knew that they couldn't stop her. They also knew that she would abuse them if they tried, and they were almost happy to see her go after being harmed by her and really mistreated horribly for all of this time. Now, her parents believed that the worst was over. However, they didn't know much about what was going on in their daughter's life at this time. But if you asked them, it was said that they could have predicted that Rachel would become a killer. They had seen the anger and the violence that she held within herself themselves. It turned out that there was lots of drama and chaos happening that no one would really know about unless they were online. It was 2009, there was a boom of social media, there was yet to be Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, but MySpace was becoming hugely popular with the teens and adults. They were learning that they could do pretty much anything in cyberspace, and a lot of the times the parents would have no idea about anything. There were no rules, no guidelines, no past experiences to learn from, and parents had no idea how to monitor them or knew what would really occur at all. These teens were really the guinea pigs. They were free to post mirror selfies, set music and wallpaper for their profiles, add friends as they pleased, and name their besties as their top 8. However, they could also message whoever they wanted as well. Now, Sarah as well as Rachel both had these MySpace profiles like many teens did during this time. And about a year before the murder, Sarah was on MySpace when she saw a picture of her boyfriend with another female. When she confronted Joshua about this, he admitted that he was sleeping with that other girl in the picture. You see, a few months after meeting Sarah, Joshua kind of began ignoring her. They had talked that whole summer and they were really getting to know each other. They were hanging out all the time. They were flirting, and suddenly he went cold. Now, Sarah was distraught that her first love wasn't giving her any attention. She was begging him for that. She didn't understand what was happening. She was so innocent. She didn't see the red flags, and she didn't realize that it wasn't okay, that Joshua was very controlling, that she could no longer wear shorts or skirts and had to constantly wear pants when around him because he didn't like when anybody else saw her legs. She didn't know that a boyfriend should make you feel better about yourself, not worse. Eventually, during the time when Joshua was ignoring her, he eventually did get back to her and start talking to her again, and she asked if he wanted to meet her parents. Now, immediately, Sarah's parents disliked Joshua. They saw how controlling and bad that he treated her, and he didn't try to hide it from them either. But as many parents know, trying to pull your child away from a person they believe they're in love with can often push them right back into their arms. And so they kind of had to tread that line of making sure that Sarah was safe as well as not making it worse. And so they tried to leave her be, hoping that the relationship would end soon. I mean, her father would call Joshua a rat all the time because that's seriously how bad they hated this boy. However, they then began to notice that Sarah was losing a lot of who she was. She had transferred high schools to be with Joshua, and the main problem with this was that the original high school she went to, she had picked because it had a program to become a vet. It was like the first stepping stone for her to go to college and become a veterinarian, and she switched schools to be with her boyfriend that did not have this program. She then started saying she didn't even know if she wanted to be a vet. They then began to see bruises on Sarah, but anytime they asked about it, she would say that they just liked to play fight.
I brought Sarah up to be a strong-willed woman, and it was sad to see her be a tiny person, like someone had control over her, power over her.
When Josh said do it, Sarah did it.
Her friends who knew Sarah really well weren't impressed with Joshua and said that she had almost morphed into Joshua at this time. What many didn't know was that not only was Joshua a horrible boyfriend, he had also become abusive at this time. It even got bad enough that one time Joshua punched Sarah in the face and she didn't even want to press charges. They would go out and about and not be able to keep it together long enough to have a public outing. They would be fighting in public and the cops would be called and have to break it up. Joshua was also dating both Sarah and the girl in the photo on MySpace that Sarah had seen, who was Rachel Wade. He also had a baby with another girl named Erin, whom he had nothing to do with. Neither of these girls knew at first. But when Sarah saw these pictures, she got angry. She had fought so hard to keep Joshua, and she was not going to let this girl take him away. Instead of getting rid of Joshua, because he was this horrible boyfriend and human being, she began to get petty. Not towards him, towards Rachel, towards the other woman, and Sarah posted photos of Joshua and herself. And on June 17th of 2008, Rachel wrote on her own MySpace after seeing Sarah's photos with Joshua, "When we first met, I was madly in love, but since then things have changed. You called me names, you slept around. I deserve so much better." It really seemed as though Rachel was backing out of the situation, not wanting anything to do with Joshua or Sarah. But that is when Sarah found this post and commented that Joshua had found better. Rachel then began to get angry because her ego was in the balance, and that's when she began fighting to get him back. But really, it was just fighting to get him away from Sarah and to win in this fight for this boy. Now, after the stabbing of Sarah Ludeman, when Rachel was taken down to the police station, she was crying throughout the whole entire interrogation. She claimed that she was waiting for Joshua to come over to her house to watch movies that night, but she decided to take a walk with her dog. She had her own apartment, and so she would go out and take this walk, and then she heard a honk in the road, and she looked over and she believed that she saw Sarah yelling at her to stay away from her man. Now, this really scared Rachel, and she said that she ran back inside her apartment, she went to the kitchen, and she got a kitchen knife. At this point, she also called her ex-boyfriend, who was Javier Laboy. So Rachel decided to go to Javier's home, which was still in the area of Pinellas Park where she lived. And Sarah at this time was over at Joshua's house, and she had driven her parents' minivan over there. And at this point, she was actually going to go to McDonald's with Josh's sister Janet and their friend Jalissa Smith. During that time, they were driving to McDonald's when they ran into another friend named Ashley Lovelady, and she was driving in her own car. They parked at this, stoplight, and they began talking, and Sarah was kind of telling Ashley about how, her and Rachel had been fighting, and that is when Ashley said, "Well, actually, I saw Rachel at Javier's house." They decided instead of going to McDonald's, they were going to head over to Javier's house. When Sarah got to the house, Rachel was outside with her knife talking to Javier and another friend named Dustin Grimes. At this point, Rachel claimed that Sarah tried to hit her many different times. She got out of the car, she began threatening her. And Rachel said that she was scared, she was being attacked by Sarah, and then Jeanette got out of the car, was attacking her as well, and she was kind of flailing her arms and didn't realize that she was stabbing her while defending herself. She was telling investigators over and over that she never planned to kill anyone, that she had a great life, that when she looked down at Sarah, she saw the blood. She didn't know she had been stabbed, that she stabbed her. She didn't know where she was stabbed, how bad it was. And when investigators informed Rachel that Sarah had died in the hospital, she began sobbing.
She just started screaming at me, and she laughed at me and said I wasn't going to do anything, and then she realized that I had a knife, and she kind of backed up, and then she started swinging on me anyways, and I just...
When you say she started swinging on you, what was she doing?
She started punching me in my face.
Flailing at you?
Yeah.
Punching?
And then I saw Janet coming around.
And where were you holding the knife at the time?
I just had it out to the side, and then I saw Janet coming at me, and I saw the other girl come around the back end of the car, and they were all screaming at me, and Janet was telling me that I was crazy and I wasn't going to do anything, and then, she said that she wished I would stab her.
Who said that?
Janet.
Said, I wish you'd stab me?
Yeah, she said, I bet you won't stab me, I wish you would. And when Sarah was hitting me, I went to hit her, and I really did not mean stab her. Okay. I'm not going to kill somebody.
Now, Rachel said that she was not only scared of Sarah and what her and her friends would do to her, but also what Joshua would do, as he had hit her before. Now, Rachel was then taken to Pinellas County Jail and given a $500,000 bond for murder in the second degree. Now, Ashley Lovelady, the girl who had told Sarah allegedly where Rachel was brought in for questioning as well, and she denied ever saying this. So they let her go, knowing that most likely she was lying about this, and she did end up calling the investigators back the next day, telling them that she lied and that she just didn't want anybody to think that the reason that Sarah was now dead was her fault, because Sarah was her friend. Now, when investigators were trying to figure out why this really occurred and what led Rachel to actually kill this girl over a boy, they were looking into her life, and it really did seem as though she had been trying to get her life together by this point, from being that kind of wild and crazy and abusive teenager. She had gotten this job at Applebee's she had had for a while. She was paying for her own apartment and everything inside, and all the while she had also gotten her GED after dropping out. She was taking a break from the many older boys, and she was really just kind of taking care of herself and being independent, until she met up with Joshua once again. However, after a while of dealing with him, she appeared to be done. But he would always reel her back in, especially when she got jealous seeing the photos with Sarah. So investigators had to figure out, was this an accidental murder or a fight that went too far, or was it a premeditated murder? Now, looking into the relationship between Rachel and Sarah, it really was quite a volatile one. They didn't know each other personally until they were fighting over Joshua on MySpace, which then escalated to real life. Because what I didn't tell you was that once Rachel had posted those photos and they were kind of going back and forth, going at it, Sarah and her friends started showing up at Applebee's where Rachel worked and sitting in her section. They were said to trip her, spill things on her, and make her life miserable. Now, at the same time, Rachel would fire back, they would slash each other's tires, and it wasn't long before a fight broke out. But the first time, it would only be over the phone. Rachel had gotten Sarah's phone number, and they began calling and texting each other, fighting over Joshua. Rachel then left Sarah a voicemail saying she was effing with her when she effed with Josh, and she was just calling to let her know that she was going to get effed up, or something of hers would be. She ended the call with, "Stop being a B." 2 months later, this was still going on, and on August 26th, Rachel left another voicemail after seeing that Sarah had posted more photos of her and Joshua. Rachel was threatening her to stay away from Joshua and that her A was hers. She then said one thing she would make good on.
Please tell me, Sarah, why you would be a dumb enough to put a brand new picture of you and Josh at the beach. Seriously, I told you to watch your back and not to chill with him. Now your ass is mine, and I'm guaranteeing you I'm gonna murder you. I'm letting you know that now, because you know what? Josh might have played me, but bitch, I'm gonna play your ass out too. Watch. You're a fat bitch, and I'm gonna kill you. I swear on my life. Watch out your window when I get off work tonight, you dumb bitch.
At this point, Sarah was posting more photos with Joshua with the caption, "How do you like my photos? My man, not yours." Another voicemail came in from Rachel not too long after saying, "I'm going to find you and beat your A." She called Sarah a pathetic B and said that she didn't have anything going for her and that Joshua basically wouldn't pick her over Rachel.
It's so funny how you talk and you want to sit there and say that my man was at your house. Then tell me what he was wearing tonight, Sarah. You're a dumb bitch for real. If you're lying, I'm going to find you and I'm going to beat your ass. If you're not lying, I'm going to find you and beat your ass, okay? You keep playing games. You're a pathetic little bitch and you're a little girl. Honestly, what do you have that's going for you that Josh wants you over me for? I got a job, had my own place. What? Seriously? He could get anything he wants from me. Any thing, not to mention that I look probably 10 times better than you. And you run your mouth. You still got your mommy and daddy's curfew, bitch, for God's sake. What why do you run your mouth, and why are you that pathetic? Please do leave shit on your MySpace, because that's old news, just like you and him are. So keep talking, Sarah. You don't know when to stop. You haven't learned your lesson yet, but I'm going to teach you it. I'm telling you now. Keep with me, Sarah. And dumb, psychotic little bitches. And I'm telling you now, I'm going to show you psycho. Keep with me. You're with the wrong person and with the one thing that I care about. So keep going, Sarah. Play your game, because I'm going to teach you how to grow up real quick.
Now, during this whole time, Joshua was also involved with another woman. This was Erin Slothauer, who was Joshua's baby's mother. And she was allegedly also dating him as well. And so 2 weeks before the murder, Sarah and Erin actually had a fight in person. There were also said to be voicemails that Sarah left for Rachel, but none were found. Rachel said that she deleted them, but many said that they were about the same thing. You know, Sarah was threatening Rachel for the same things and staying away from Joshua. After 11 months, almost a year of fighting, Rachel would make good on her threats. After the murder, investigators were told by the doctors and medical examiners that Sarah had actually been stabbed 2 times, once in the shoulder and once in the heart, not just one accidental stabbing like Rachel was saying had occurred. Now, witnesses from that night would come forward to say that Sarah didn't even leave the car. It wasn't a fight, 2 people charging at each other. It was Rachel basically running up to the van and attacking. That Sarah was clutching her chest when she called Joshua, and all she could get out was that it hurt. Joshua then ran to Sarah's home to tell her parents, and they all rushed to the scene shortly after, but the medics were already there at that point. But a little bit about this boy who 3 different women were fighting over. He was 19, 5'5", living with his parents, without a job, without any passion, without anything he was working for. He posted photos of his abs, showed off his actual gun, and had his last name tattooed across his back. He didn't pay child support for his child. In fact, the women he was with often paid for him for everything, and he was called a moocher by his friends and the community, and they claimed that he was dating these girls for their money, but he would never commit to any of them. They were all friends with benefits. The community knew him and his brother Jay as players, but this didn't stop the girls from flocking to them, especially once they were in their grasp and then manipulation began. Now, Sarah's funeral was held, and it was a month before she would have gone to her high school prom. Joshua was not invited, and this was due to when she was in the hospital. He had gone with her parents to the hospital. However, he refused to go into the room when Charlie, her father, asked, and her parents decided that if he couldn't do that, he wasn't going to be allowed at the funeral. Now, Sarah's parents decided to keep her bedroom exactly how it was when she passed away, except for the picture of Joshua, which they destroyed. During the trial on July 20th of 2010, True TV in session aired the proceedings for the world to see. Now, the TV show would actually end at 3 p.m. and then CNN would live stream the rest of the trial for the internet. Now, this can be seen on Court TV online where the whole trial is posted. I will have it linked down below if you would like to watch. However, I will discuss what occurred. The defense was claiming that this was completely in self-defense. Sarah instigated the fight, and there was even a campaign on Facebook to free Rachel Wade. Now, witnesses would confess that Joshua told all of his girls that if they loved him, they would fight for him. Now, this was going to be brought up in the trial because he was the reason these girls were fighting. However, they were not pressing any charges against Joshua. He would take the stand where he said he wasn't dating either girls. They were all friends with benefits, and then he broke it off with Rachel because he was told by the guys that she was sleeping around. When he asked if he had asked the girlfriends to fight for him, he did deny this. Joshua also said that none of the girls were ever upset with him, even though there were multiple text messages from Rachel and Sarah who were trying to get to the bottom of why they were each posting photos of their boyfriend on MySpace, who was the same man. When he was asked if he loved Sarah, he did say that he did think so, but it was not a definite yes. He also said the night of the murder that he and Sarah were smoking marijuana. And something I found odd about his testimony was that it was much shorter than the rest of the witnesses. And of course, he wasn't at the crime scene when the murder occurred, but he did have so much to do with it. And it was only about 14 minutes, where the rest of the witnesses were about an hour or over. Rachel was quite emotional during the trial, and she was even crying when some of the witnesses cried. She had also refused to take the plea deal, wanting to tell her side of the story. Now, they got into the fact that some witnesses had said at the crime scene that after stabbing Sarah, Rachel just calmly walked back to the house. And this is while Sarah was trying to get back into her car, but she fell to the ground because she was dying. Janet, Sarah's friend who saw this happen, then went after Rachel because she didn't understand that her friend was dying. She just knew, well, you attacked my friend, so she then started to attack Rachel. And she said that Rachel never tried to stab her. She still had the knife in her hand. Janet was going after her, just as she said Sarah had, and she not once tried to use that knife. Janet was trying to tell Rachel that instead of stabbing her brother, like Rachel was threatening over the phone to Sarah, she should just stab her instead. They would all testify that Rachel had called Sarah right before she murdered her, saying that she was going to stab her and her Mexican boyfriend, meaning Joshua. Rachel at this time told Janet she was done and didn't want anything to do with the fight with Janet and just walked away. Meanwhile, Jalissa found Sarah on the ground, saw how bad it was, and ended up calling 911 and screaming, Rachel just stabbed her. Janet said she was saying to Rachel, you stabbed her, and Rachel just said that she didn't care and started laughing. Once Rachel got away from this fight, she ended up throwing the knife over the neighbor's house and calmly saying that she was done. When the medics arrived, Rachel was said to very calmly sit at the scene, smoking a cigarette with zero emotion. Javier said that she had a blank look on her face, like she didn't even know she was there with them. Now, Sarah's father, who had gotten there to find his daughter, was actually stopped by the medics from going to the scene, and he knew that she was dead, and there was nothing else that he could do. Now, Rachel did get up on the stand and testified, and she said that Joshua cheated on her with both Aaron and Sarah. She said that not only was Sarah threatening her, but so was Janet. And Janet, this was even before the actual fight. She said that Janet would go to her apartment and try to knock down the door, and that Joshua once showed up at her house with a gun pointed at her, saying that she could never leave him because it was not her choice. She was saying that basically this all culminated to why she felt like she needed that knife for self-defense, but she thought that holding the knife would make them back off and that she wouldn't have to use it. Now, when she began speaking about the actual murder, she did begin to cry, and she said that she only stabbed Sarah because she had hit her 3 times in the head during the fight. But when asked why she got rid of the knife, if this really was in self-defense, Rachel said that she didn't really know what happened and she didn't want anybody else to get a hold of it. And she said that she never approached these people. She never went after them. It was a fight. They came to her. The prosecution were using the stand your ground law, which says that a person can use force, including deadly force, to defend oneself. However, there is a duty to retreat to avoid violence if possible. But Rachel's lawyer, Jay, said that this was true, that she had to defend herself because Sarah was much bigger than she was, that Sarah was taunting her, and that she had already tried to fight her once, pulling her hair. Now, Joshua's sister, Janet, as well as Dustin Grimes, did testify against Rachel, saying that they heard her tell Sarah that she was going to kill her. Then they watched her walk up to that minivan and stab Sarah. Javier also did testify, but he said that he didn't see much. The voicemails that Rachel had sent to Sarah were also played for the jury as well, and after 3 days of the trial and 2.5 hours of deliberation, she was found guilty.
State of Florida versus Rachel Wade, murder in the second degree. We, the jury, find as follows: ask that the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of murder in the second degree as charged. So say we all. Michael Schwartz, foreperson of jury, July 23, 2010.
Now, the prosecutors wanted life, and the defense wanted 15 years in prison, 15 years of probation. But for this crime, she could be given anywhere from 20 months to life. And Rachel said, I think about it every day, regardless if they give me 5 years or 20 years, more than they could give me. I never meant to do it, and I'm still going to have to live with it, no matter if I'm home or in prison. Now, during the impact statements, Rachel's friends did come forward to say that Rachel was made out to be this appalling person that she wasn't, that she actually expressed remorse to them multiple times, and that she was this compassionate, kind, and very strong person. They all believed that this was this tragedy, but that Rachel was a great person and would continue to be a great person who was going to make a difference no matter where they put her. Now, Rachel's grandparents also came forward, and they said that Rachel's 7 cousins often looked up to her, and they said it would be a shame since she was so young to let her good qualities go to waste in prison. Her parents then came up and they spoke to Sarah's parents, saying that they prayed that they would find peace and find forgiveness for Rachel. They said that they think about Sarah every day. Now, Rachel then spoke to the court, and she was saying that while in jail, she has been super remorseful and wishes she could go back. She also said that she wants to talk to kids about how to avoid these kinds of conversations while she was in jail and when she gets out. And then she addressed Sarah's parents, saying that she was asking them for forgiveness, and she also said that she was sorry. Now, she was sentenced to 27 years, and this was said to be due to her age and her small criminal record. Now, the judge, Joseph Ballone, said that the murder wasn't an accident. He was not falling for that this was self-defense. Now, Sarah did cry at her sentence, chewing on her lips, playing with her hair, and Sarah's father was kind of upset at this. He basically wanted an eye for an eye, but said that it was a tragedy on both sides. Now, Sarah's mother was upset too, saying that Rachel's parents still get to see Rachel while she's in jail, but she doesn't get to see her daughter. Now, Rachel's lawyer did say this was a cautionary tale of a potentially deadly mix of young people and modern communications technology. He said, when you start looking at the tragic nature of this, the social networking, the instant messaging, the ability of people to hide behind the screen and make statements and create situations, it just festered until it bubbled up and exploded into a situation, until two good girls, their worlds collided. He now actually visits schools and talks with kids and parents about internet dangers. But a year later, Rachel did an interview from prison with ABC at her Lowell Correctional Facility. And she said that she believed that social media had a huge part in this and causing the murder. She said it gives people the ability to say whatever they want with little consequence. She said she now knows that she should have been mad at Joshua. They shouldn't have been mad at each other. Now, she also planned on writing a book while in jail. She appealed her case, but this was denied. And that same year, Sarah's father, Charlie, actually filed a civil lawsuit against Rachel to stop her from profiting off the murder in any way. He was seeking $15,000 for things like medical bills, burial costs, and pain and suffering. He was also tired of seeing Rachel's face on TV, and he said that he and his wife were tired of everybody looking at Rachel in prison and going, poor little girl, when their poor little girl was in a grave. Now, Dateline covered this, as well as Deadly Women, Snapped, Crime Watch Daily, and this case was also the inspiration for a Lifetime movie called He's Not Worth Dying For. Now, Rachel remains in prison today, but she is set to be released in her 40s. Now, do you think Josh initiated this fight? Rachel's lawyer, Jay Herbert, said that he was a very conniving person, and while he was not legally responsible for the murder, he is ethically culpable. However, after this trial, there were very few sightings of him due to the fact that some people did believe this. His friends who know him now say that he cries often, he's very quiet, and he doesn't do anything at all. He doesn't work. His mother has been called multiple times, and she will tell them every time, he no longer lives with me. And that his reputation was put down so bad that lies were told and that she has nothing to say. He is said to be dating the mother of his child, Erin, now at this point that his other girlfriend was murdered and his other girlfriend is in jail. Joshua never visited Rachel in jail either, and he wasn't charged with being involved at all because they couldn't come up with anything to punish him for. Do you think he deserved jail time? I'm not sure if there is anything legally to even prosecute him for. He manipulated these girls in a way where he had no responsibility over what they were doing, but he knew just what he was doing. Do you believe 27 years was enough for Rachel? Should she have gotten more? Less? And do you think that social media was a huge role in this? I think that regardless, they probably, would have been upset if they saw their boyfriend, out and about with another girl, but the likelihood of that happening would be a lot slimmer than seeing that somebody posted on their social media page about that. And I think it just made it extremely hard. The whole community then knew, well, this man's cheating on you and you're still with him. And so I think that also played a part in them feeling like, well, I have to fight for my man. I have to take him back from this girl because now everybody's watching. And at the end of the day, they felt like they could say anything they wanted. They could threaten each other. They could use words that even they didn't really know about the consequences of because they weren't saying it to somebody's face. Even today, this is a problem with the internet and people feeling like they can say truly anything that they please because they can hide behind the screen. And they don't have to mean what they're saying, even if it's affecting that other person. Truly, I think that the most heartbreaking part of all of this is that they went after each other rather than not going after Joshua, but choosing themselves, choosing a better man over Joshua. You know, I think at that age, when you're very young, it is hard to see that the other girl isn't the problem. It's your man. And if a man isn't choosing you in every moment of every day, then you need to choose yourself. And I think that these two girls, if they would have had that knowledge, if they would have, you know, just looked inward, they could have probably become friends out of this. And Joshua could have been a single, lonely guy stuck with his own problems. But unfortunately, instead, Sarah's life was taken. Again, tell me what you think. Give me your opinions on this case. Please be respectful. And don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay.